And tonight on the Daily Wrap, it is official. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has entered the 2016 race for the White House. But will his in-your-face style play nationally? Business groups are slamming the president's plan to double overtime pay for millions of American workers. They're calling it a job killer. And should we disarm the police? One group thinks so. We'll tell you about all that. Plus, what potluck we do here, yay and nay, all that stuff. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host, Rick Unger. You're looking well.
Feeling good, feeling good.
So Chris Christie into the race.
I personally was absolutely stunned, weren't you?
Yeah.
Who saw that coming, right?
Nobody saw that coming.
Nobody saw that coming.
There were only two announcements before the announcement.
I know.
Usually six.
Yeah, that was it, right? That's what threw me off. I figured today would be an announcement, that he'll be shortly making an announcement. Mm-hmm. So how many have we got?
14.
14.
Yep.
I'm about halfway there.
I think so. We could have a full baseball roster at this point. This would be incredible. Anyway, joining Rick to his right, she is America's pundit and Philly attorney. Heather Hansen joins us. And finally, he's the editor of thewisdomdaily.com, and you're not. Brad Hirschfield back once again. Okay, let's get right to the Daily Download.
And that is why today I am proud to announce my candidacy for the Republican nomination for President of the United States of America.
His son looked thrilled in that shot. Anyway, Mr. Christie may be tanking in the polls, but nothing will stop him from running for president. And he's making no apologies for his candid style.
I am not running for President of the United States as a surrogate for being elected prom king of America. I am not looking to be the most popular guy who looks in your eyes every day and tries to figure out what you want to hear, say it, and then turn around and do something else. When I stand up on a stage like this in front of all of you, there is one thing you will know for sure. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean, and that's what America needs right now.
All right. It's like Trump, but different. The New Jersey governor is now the 14th Republican to run for president.
Like Bon Jovi to me.
And that is Bon Jovi, John Bon Jovi, New Jersey rocker from Sayreville, New Jersey, who says you can't go home. That was blasted on the sound system after Christie's speech. And unlike Neil Young, who objected to Donald Trump playing one of his songs, Bon Jovi says he gave Christie permission, even though the singer just held a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton on Monday. That's pretty cool. Chris Christie's star has faded since the Bridgegate scandal, but he can break through, or that's the question actually, can he break through in this crowded field, Rick Unger?
You know, I got to say something. I was watching the shot of Christie speaking, and this is why he's such a great politician. He is the only person I've seen making an announcement. They always have people standing behind them. He turned around at one point and spoke to those people.
That's true.
They weren't just set dressing for him. Mm-hmm. This is why he's good at this, and this is why you can never count Chris Christie out. He has excellent name recognition. This is something the pundits are not thinking about. They know who he is out there. So, yeah, I mean, you have to take Christie seriously.
That's true, Heather. The thing is, now that we have 14 candidates, and Rick and I were joking about this before the show, somebody brought up Rand Paul, and Rick, we both said, is he still running? And I don't mean that as a slight, but there's so many people. And the challenge right now is to be a voice above everybody else. And Chris Christie, unlike Trump, has that ability, but also has a record to run on as an executive.
I have always really liked Chris Christie. The thing is, right now, people in New Jersey don't like him all that well. So comparing him to Governor Kasich, who we were talking about yesterday, who is doing so well in Ohio and is really taking care of things in Ohio, and then you've got somebody who his own constituents are really unhappy with him. You know, he's got hashtag telling it like it is. That was his hashtag. Apparently that was hijacked today, and there's all kinds of people telling it like it is in not such a great way for Chris Christie.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of people who are going to have negative things to say as well.
Brad, I don't see where he gets his support from, really, right? Because he had no margin for error before Bridgegate. Because the last thing that conservatives want is another Northeast moderate Republican. So those folks are out. And now that he's lost many independents, because even though Bridgegate, he's never been charged with anything.
And he says he has
and
nothing to do with it.
And
But-
they haven't found anybody.
Yeah, no, I get it. But still, I mean, the brand is damaged as a result of it. So I don't see where it's going to come from, quite frankly.
So look, he's a bridge builder who may get undone by a bridge. There's no question. But I don't think so, because in his own words, and this is what I do love about the guy, he's slick as sandpaper. Right? He gets out there and he's not aiming to please. He's aiming to connect. And I think, and we've talked about this on the show a lot, with public trust in big public institutions plummeting, this guy, who has a very scattered track record in terms of actual deliverables in the state, employment has lagged in the state. They have not recovered as well as other states have recovered.
46th in growth.
Right. But here's the thing. When he talks to you, people believe that he's bringing the real deal. So I think the question is he will tell it like it is. The question is what he's telling actually going to turn into a deliverable? I don't know, but I do think people are ready for an anti-Donald, meaning someone who talks to them but actually means it.
The problem is, it won't be Bridgegate that will cause him his problem. You know, we all focused on it here in the Northeast, but they're not focusing on the country. His problem is probably best summed up in a very interesting piece that ran in the State Ledger today in New Jersey.
Yeah, the Star Ledger.
Or Star Ledger, thank you. Where basically the writer very carefully pointed out the things that Christie promised that turned out to be stone cold, slam dunk, not a lot of room for wiggle, lies. You know?
Well,
Called him
that's the problem.
pathological.
That's the
Yeah.
problem
That was
with
the editor-in-chief of the Star Ledger in Newark.
and the people in Jersey just aren't happy with him, and that's the problem. If the audio doesn't match the video, then they're going to lose
It's
trust
true.
altogether.
I'm not sure they're lies. I think we have a problem in the culture in general,
Aren't you
confusing
some of them-
people who are wrong
Well,
with
no,
people
no,
who are
no.
lying.
Let me
Now,
give
there
you
were a
an-
few of them, I did read it. He
Yeah.
was right, but I think in general, people like the freshness of his attitude, and that's going to have some appeal. To the presidency, I don't know. But to carry this a little further for a while, I think it will.
So does Chris Christie have the temperament to be president? Let's take a look at some of his greatest hits.
Are you stupid? On topic. Next question. You want to have the conversation later? I'm happy to have it, buddy. But until that time, sit down and shut up.
You don't send your children to public schools, you send them to private schools. So I was wondering why you think it's fair to be cutting school funding to public schools.
What's her name? What's her name, guys? Real quick, because the governor's talking. What is it? Gail. Talk to Gail.
Hey, Gail, you know what? First off, it's none of your business. I don't ask you where you send your kids to school. Don't bother me about where I send.
Sopranos off the air? I don't think so. Alive and well, Gandolfini.
Yeah, but see, what he does is he'll take a question like that, which was not an unreasonable question.
Right.
She didn't say, why do you send your kids to private school when I have to send mine to public? She said, you're willing to cut my budget, my public school budget, because you send your kids to private school. So when he does that, you know, there are people who go, yeah, you're tough, you're this. I sat there and go, hey, knock it off. You're just not only avoiding her question, you're being an arrogant punk while you do it.
I think it worked the first couple times that he did it, and people applauded,
Yeah,
like,
so
good
he
for
kept
you.
doing it, right.
And then he almost became a caricature of himself when he's yelling at people, even when they kind of don't deserve it. And so a guy who lives in Jersey, I've seen the peaks and valleys of Chris Christie. And when he was reelected, that was over 60%. And there were polls where he was beating Hillary Clinton. He was the biggest threat to her.
Yeah, he was.
And now I can't see any scenario where he wins, particularly when things go down to South Carolina, down south. No, ain't gonna happen.
He peaked too early, and then and the Bridgegate. I don't even know that was what brought him down, but it was the timing that he was on Oprah. You know, he did that piece on Oprah,
Yeah.
and everybody really liked him. But
I wonder, ironically, if 2012 would have been the better time for him to run.
It clearly would have been.
Absolutely.
Clearly his popularity is much
Absolutely.
higher. Look, he is charming, he is fresh, but again, are the deliverables there to actually be able to go anywhere? That's a real question.
Absolutely. So, meanwhile, protesters gathered outside the Livingston, New Jersey high school where Christie made his announcement. But it's not just at home where Christie has some problems. A recent New Hampshire poll finds him in 6th place with just 5% of the vote. 5 is actually pretty good these days. How important will New Hampshire be for Chris Christie if he wants to go deep into this race? Now, we remember, Rick, that that's where Buchanan won, that's where John McCain won in 2000. New Hampshire likes outsiders and people like Christie. Maybe that's the one place he can make a mark.
He might, I look at that graphic, and there's really only one thing I can see, and that is that Scott Walker keeps dropping with every single poll.
Wow.
Way to go, people
I think
in
they
New
called that
Hampshire. You're smart.
Schadenfreude? Something to that effect?
Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude, yeah. My
Smart
German German is a
people
little
up there
It's
in
a nice
New
German
Hampshire.
lesson here on the show.
Yeah, so Iowa could be a challenge, but New Hampshire quickly.
New Hampshire, for a lot of people, are really pushing New Hampshire because they know it's their place to really try and make a run for it.
Mm-hmm.
He
Absolutely.
may do great, but the predictive value is really low.
True, true. We want to hear about what you think about Governor Christie's chances. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Let us know what you think. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host Rick Unger, and filling out the panel, Hanson Hirschfield. Okay, business groups are slamming the president's new plan to make more Americans eligible for overtime pay under current labor laws. Workers with an annual salary of just under $24,000 must be paid overtime if they work more than a 40-hour work week. The president's plan more than doubles that salary threshold to just over $50,000. Business groups are calling this a job killer. Here's what the National Retail Federation had to say, and we quote, "The proposal is going to cost billions of dollars. It's going to limit advancement opportunities, and ultimately it will reduce employee benefits." This change is another example of the administration being completely divorced from reality and adding more burdens to employers and expecting them to just absorb the impact. That's from Randy Johnson of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So, overtime pay, a good idea in these situations. I know you're for raising the minimum salary, Mr. Unger.
You know,
does this go too far?
No, because what people forget is before the era of public companies, everybody got overtime pay. It didn't matter because people who were making $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 a year weren't on salaries or the equivalent at that time. They were almost all hourly employees, and they got overtime when they worked more than a 40-hour week. As the shift went to making sure the money all got to the shareholders instead of the people who work in the company, that was one of the tricks. We'll put you on salary, so then we don't have to pay you overtime. So we're not doing something new here, folks. We are going back to the way that it was when things were a bit more fair. And just so you know, the president has the power to do this without Congress.
Yeah, there's nothing the Congress
Right.
can do.
No
to
Nothing
stop it.
doubt about
anybody
that.
can do.
No
That's
doubt
true,
about
but
that.
you were nodding
Where's the
in
money
slight
supposed to
disagreement.
come from?
The money's going to come from shareholders.
But Rick, not every company has the money to be paying people. What's going to happen is more and more of these employees are going to become part-time, because between this and Obamacare, and then we're going to have a whole lot of people who have part-time jobs and aren't able to support their
I
families.
hear you. I do hear you. But let me ask you the question. Do you think it's fair that people aren't paid overtime?
I
Given
think
our own
it depends on the
history.
situation. I think it depends on the
Okay,
situation. I think that
that's
there are some
reasonable.
people, I think that this rule, it really just creates more regulations for companies. I think companies should be doing the right thing.
Some people's pockets. It's not just regulations.
And takes
it's real
money
money
from others.
But you got to go back to my question. If you agree there are situations,
Sure.
without knowing which ones, that where people should, because they deserve
Right.
overtime, then why shouldn't they get it? Why is it always the worker
But for the
who has
most-
to suffer?
But for the
all
most
of these
part,
companies have great
do the
profits.
right thing.
No,
For the most
actually
part,
they
companies
don't.
do the right thing. They do, and
They
and the market will stop the situations when they're not treating their employees
But you
correctly.
agree they should be getting overtime.
Absolutely, there are
Let's get-
situations where they
Let's
should.
get Brad in. Does this include private companies or just public companies?
No, this will include private companies.
Because you mentioned
No,
shareholders,
no,
so
well,
that's
when it all
what.
That's where it started to
That's when it
change. So
starts.
Rick's point is well taken.
Okay.
I think what we have to admit is here, both the people who say it'll kill jobs and destroy the economy, and the people who say it'll send more dollars back into the economy, because we should be clear, the people who make these dollars tend to spend those
They are
dollars.
the economy.
So we don't really know, because there's real evidence on both sides. It's like the minimum wage, and you could make a case that actually since this floor, this sort of ceiling rather, was established last time in 2004, it's been a long time. So I want to make a proposal and see what the two of you think about it. I actually think I am in favor of raising this threshold. This seems to make sense, although I am concerned about adding legislation. That's a separate issue. It's not the economics. It's too much government, I think. But that said, what if we also, along with raising the ceiling, raise the floor? The average American works 49 and a half hours a week. Maybe we should raise the threshold to 50,000, but maybe it should only kick in
Okay,
after
50
45
hours,
hours a week.
45 hours.
45 hours a week. In other words, let's understand that there has been a 400% increase in productivity in the last 40 years in this country. The 40-hour work week, for better or for worse, is gone. Maybe it should come back, but it's over for most of us. When's the last many of us worked 40 hours?
Heather worked 90 this week.
Right. Exactly.
We're only
And that's a slow week for
Heather
her.
worked 90 yesterday.
Right, I was going to say.
We're only on Tuesday.
So maybe we should think about raising the ceiling, but not without raising the
That's
floor.
actually an interesting proposal.
Yeah.
I'm just
Get the president on the phone.
yeah. I got
Tell him this.
I got the bad phone. But speaking of the president, I read an article today that said that last week was his best week.
Yeah.
That he had a lot of wins, and we talked about legacy, and he's going to have to get the trade agreement, and that looks like it's dead, and Obamacare can go away, and all these things, and now his approval rating is actually over 50%.
Yeah.
So do you think do you think this was pre-planned a while ago, or do you think he came out today and say, I got a lot of capital right now, momentum at least?
He didn't just think of this yesterday.
No, I'm not saying that, but the announcement seems at a time where
it's
he's
time for
seen
when
in a
he's
better
strong.
light by some folks right now.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I think that
Look, this president's doing something we've never seen in history. He is showing that a lame duck president can actually use his lame duckness to his advantage. We've never seen this before.
We've
It's
never
remarkable.
heard the word duckness.
Duckness.
Duckness. I like it. It's good. I
haven't heard that before either.
It's also outside the legislative process, which is one of the things people really resist most. So it's one of those things, you can make the most of a good thing, you can also make the most of a bad thing. He may end up with a strong legacy. Whether or not it's always good for the country, that's going to get decided down the road.
That's the thing, Heather. He's getting wins on the trade agreement that we don't know anything about, that Democrats and unions hate, right? And then Obamacare still remains to be seen if that's going to be something that could be called a success or something that may have ended.
I think some of the positive feedback that he's getting and the positive polling is just simply because the Supreme Court agreed with him. Whether or not he had anything to do, like gay marriage, he had nothing to do with that, and in fact, he didn't even support it to start with. So I think that it's just, we'll see a dip again.
But there were a lot of other things that have happened over these past 15 days
trade
that
agreement,
he does
for sure,
have, and Obamacare. But you're right, he's going to get the benefit of gay marriage, but he didn't really do anything about it. No, this president, he's doing things now I never thought were possible, frankly. Not just in terms of what he's accomplishing, but in terms of when he's accomplishing it. It's remarkable.
I thought 2014 when they lost the Senate, and he said, "What the heck? Wait, how can he get anything done?" And granted, he's just getting things done on his own. That some people don't like
he's
that
6
much.
months away from his last year.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be off planning his library by now.
Does Hillary campaign?
Well,
for
he's
him?
still playing golf.
He still likes to golf.
Okay, we'll talk about that another time. Anyway, what do you think about the president's plan to double overtime pay? Let us know. Go to newsmax.com /comments. Back with more in a moment. And welcome back to The Wrap. On new fallout now from that shooting massacre at an historic black church in Charleston, South Carolina. Just days before the 4th of July, an anti-police group called Disarm NYPD plans to burn American flags at a park in Brooklyn. Here's part of the group's statement. There will be no peace until we tear down this system of oppression. We will set fire to this symbol of oppression, the American flags, and march to our honor of brothers and sisters who have fallen in the long struggle for freedom. Rise up. That demonstration is set to take place tomorrow evening. So, does this group have the right, well, I know we have the right, to burn the American flag? Or is this good timing, I guess, is the better question, Brad?
They clearly have the right to do it. They're clearly insane. And there's a piece of me, and I know I shouldn't admit this on air, that actually hopes that someone tries to do something to them and the cops don't show up.
Wow, more Schneidenfreude.
I can't bear it. As much
really
as I
weird.
believe in defending their right to do this, the idea that they will do it and pay no price for it, given what cops do for us every day, is absolutely mad.
Are you saying you want a blimp just to crash and
No,
their
I'm not going any
you're wishing
further. I
death?
can't believe it came out, but I'm so annoyed.
I
I
hear
will
you.
point out that last week I did talk about the fact that the same way we overreacted on the stars and bars, people were going to overreact on the American flag because a fanatic is a fanatic is a fanatic, and it's always the same lunacy.
Do you think Louis Farrakhan's going to join you?
I have to say, it reminds me of my misspent, overamped youth. So,
Vietnam.
yeah,
Not possible it was
with
that
Eugene
bad.
McCarthy,
Were you burning flags?
I never did it myself, but I've seen it happen. Let's
Right.
put it that way.
Really?
And draft cards, yes.
Effigy?
I was-
Anybody in effigy?
Don't know, but it was the '60s. Things happen.
Yeah, I guess so.
And who remembers?
But yeah, to the extent that I remember exactly. Yeah, look, it's obviously terrible. It's not the best way to approach it. It's
But the legality of it is
really interesting
Yeah.
because while the Supreme Court has said it's legal under the First Amendment, there have been numerous times where we've tried to pass constitutional amendments to make it legal, and the last time in 2006 it lost by one vote. Didn't get by the Senate. So it's definitely an issue that people have a lot of trouble with. It's interesting, Hillary Clinton was a senator at the time,
she was.
and she supported a different law. But if you go back and read about just the history of this, it was 25 years ago, almost to the day, that the Supreme Court said that the First Amendment rules, and it does. I mean, this is the freedom that the flag stands for. So while we
will
hate
say
what they
this,
do,
in all seriousness, a lot of what you end up thinking about this, I think, needs to come when we see who was there and when we see the video. And I have to say, if you see grown-ups there, people our age, it concerns me. It does. If you see kids, I'm a little more, I have to be honest.
Probably going to be adults, though, don't you think?
I don't
No.
know.
Now, some of the
if
pictures
it's
on Facebook,
kids-
it does show young people, and I agree with you in one regard. I'm not taking back what I said.
No, I
But the
understand.
less power you have, the more freedom you
Yeah.
should have to act out, because you can do less with it. That's why, for me, the flag burning, as gross as it is less upsetting than the disarm the cops part.
And yeah, I agree with that. And listen, if people write in and say, what's the difference whether kids or grown-ups? I take your point completely. I do. I understand. But kids have a way of over-expressing. We tend to grow out of it and become the people we hated
Right.
anyhow.
but
So,
kids also go to war to fight for our flag.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
right.
listen, it is disgusting.
That's
It is
fair.
horrible, but it is a freedom that we have, and it's the reason that we have our flag. And so I think that we have to allow them to do it as much as I hate it.
What do you think about this group, Disarm NYPD, that wants to disarm and demobilize the New York City Police Department? As you said, you hope something happens to them because what do you do when the police aren't around, right? I
And
mean,
we saw that in Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah.
I mean, we see what happens when the police aren't around, and it's the temptation is to say, well, then police stay home, then don't
Right, which
and
we
don't.
can't do,
Right.
but their freedom to do this is secured by the very people
here's-
they're most angry
here's
at.
the
We should
good
just be able
news.
to talk about that.
you don't have to get too upset about ridiculous things like disarm the NYPD. I
'Cause it
think
ain't gonna happen.
it ain't going to happen. We're all pretty comfortable that's not going to be the case. And the NYPD has to realize there's always going to be fringes out there, and that the rest of us know we really don't want you to disarm. Please don't. And that's real life.
Are
know?
you amazed how much the narrative has moved on from Dylan Roof and mental illness, or just, is this kid going to be executed, and everything about the actual killer, to where this has just been completely Confederate flag for the last 2 weeks?
Well,
You
but
almost forget
I actually-
about the guy who did this.
I know, but I take it as a good thing, and that may seem strange to you, but so many times these terrible things happen, and we have no outlet that's positive. And we have an outlet this time largely because of those remarkable people and that day in court where we saw what truly decent human beings do. They forgive this horrible person and they behave in a way that we can just admire. And I think because of that, there was this national need to give them something for this. And the Confederate flag conversation is not brand new. This has been going on for years, but it crystallized and it became something that we could give these people.
And Republican governors are the ones that moved on it.
I
So
just-
it's amazing how it became a blue-red issue when Republicans actually, in at least 2 states, moved
Are the ones
to
that
take it down.
move
Yeah.
something. I just wish it was something more productive that would actually.
I think it is productive.
It's-
I honestly do.
It'll be up to us. It could be. We're at a point now where people could cross the typical boundaries and actually make a difference here if they stay the course and not listen to knuckleheads like
Okay,
this.
last word on that. Let us know what you think about this flag burning event. Go to newsmax.com/comments. Back after the break. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, well, they're at it again. Yes, the group claims to protect the liberties of all, but are they including Christians? In an op-ed in the Washington Post last week, the organization made its feelings about religious freedom, Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and the Supreme Court ruling on same-sex marriage, which had not come out at the time the article was posted. In the op-ed, the ACLU wrote that they can no longer support the RFRA in its current form. And we quote, "For more than 15 years, we have been concerned about how the RFRA could be used to discriminate against others. As the events of the past couple of years illustrate, our fears are well-founded. It is now often used as a sword to discriminate against women, gay and transgender people, and others. Yes, religious freedom needs protection, but religious liberty doesn't mean the right to discriminate or to impose one's views on others." The op-ed then compares the struggles of legalizing same-sex marriage to the struggles faced when legalizing interracial marriage. In the civil rights era, another quote, we rejected the claims of those who said it would violate their religion to integrate. We can't let, the RFRA be used as a tool for a different result now. In other words, the ACLU believes the peyote-smoking Native Americans and beard-wearing Sikh-men are practicing an acceptable degree of religious freedom, but Christians are engaged in discrimination. Discrimination is bad. And if religion freedom does not include the freedom of individuals to peacefully decline involvement in private commercial activities they find objectionable, it's a meaningless concept. Okay, Brad, what do you make of this op-ed?
So that's actually two op-eds. That last bit from In Other Words
that was
a
War and
critique.
Peace. I felt like I was reading
Tolstoy. Yeah, I know. It was a long read, but you read it well.
Not really.
No, it's good. That last bit was a critique of the ACLU. Yeah. The critique is largely correct. There's one piece that I don't agree with, which is that any freedom can be played out too much, and guaranteeing freedom doesn't guarantee you the right to ride roughshod over others. That said, the ACLU piece is beyond stupid and offensive. And the truth is, they have never been committed to religious freedom. They have been committed, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, to protection of minorities. But the fact that you're a minority doesn't mean you're always right, and the fact that you're part of the majority culture, in this case Christian, doesn't mean you're always wrong. Now, this is an old conversation. Tocqueville points it out when he came here from France to study the birth of this country and said the tyranny of the majority is something with which we have to deal, and he is right. But there's also a tyranny of the minority, when the anger at majorities assumes a kind of moral rectitude that says just because you're in the majority, you must be wrong and have to apologize for who you are. So no, there's no war against Christians in this country, but this is out of control and it is inappropriate.
There was a speech in The American President, your favorite movie of Michael Douglas, and at one point he declares when he's finally fighting back, I am a card-carrying member of the ACLU. Right. Are you a card-carrying member?
Actually, I'm not, but not for any reason in particular. I just haven't joined the ACLU. Look, here's the real deal on this. It is a really, really hard problem. Anybody on either side of this who says, hey, this is easy, you either don't get it or you don't want to get it, because this is tough. Religious freedoms are every bit as important as anti-discrimination. So this makes this very tricky. What do you do when two perfectly nice gay people who are getting married want a cake, and a baker who's also a perfectly nice human being and would love to help anybody but has this religious problem? What do you do when those two collide? It is not a simple answer. For the ACLU to take as simplistic of an approach as they did was a shame. On the other hand, Reason Magazine, I think, came out a little bit too hard. We get nowhere with this until we put the real issue on the table and get people to step forth and look for a solution.
Can I offer a scenario to you, just to play off Rick's point? All right, so gay couple goes into a bakery, right? And they want a cake for their wedding. And the baker says, no, I can't do that based on my religious beliefs. So then they can leave and go down to another bakery while going on social media saying, do you know what just happened to us? And others, why not just let the free market decide? Because if word gets out, particularly depending on which community we're talking about.
Well, they'll argue in some communities there's only one baker. I don't know which communities those are, frankly, but that's the argument.
But I think your point is right. I think the free market should rule, and that the people who have these beliefs are not going. You wouldn't turn away business for anything other than a true religious belief, or at least I would hope not. Listen, when Utah passed their RFRA, they sat down. They had the LGBT community and sit down with the religious community, and they came to a compromise.
What was
that?
And
I think that it's complicated, and it gets into the difference.
But you do, just to throw in before we end the segment, what you just said is absolutely right. But we also have to remember the other side, that while that baker is practicing his or her religious beliefs, which are important, he or she is discriminating against the gay couple. This is the problem.
But that's why there has to be conversation.
There's no bad guy, though.
That's the key. We need ethical discrimination. Right. Discrimination isn't a bad word inherently. It means making a difference mindfully.
That's the best. That's the theme that you just hit on, Heather, there perfectly. Just get these groups in a room, and that never happens. Everybody's talking past each other. Anyway, let us know what you think about the ACLU's op-ed. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up next, it's potluck time. This is Daily Wrap. Do not go anywhere. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Well, before we jump in, let's jump on board, shall we? Newsmax wants to send one lucky couple on a 7-day Silver Sea cruise to the Caribbean this winter. Obviously, a luxury cruise on the Silver Wind is the trip of a lifetime. To win, however, you have to enter our sweepstakes. Visit newsmax.com/sweepstakes to enter. That's newsmax.com/sweepstakes. Somebody step on a duck? Anyway, hopefully you can't hear that at home. Anyway, before we go sideways.
Wow.
Potluck time, and Brad, you get to go first.
Oh, I get to transition from that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's try and make this serious because it actually is. It's not surprising, but the June 30th deadline in our negotiations with Iran has come and gone. It's also been extended to July 7th. It's not surprising that it's come and gone because the truth is it's to Iran's advantage to have it pass by. Because while we keep talking, they keep working. Working on what? Nuclear weapons or nuclear anything, we don't know.
There's literally somebody working on a weapon right now.
I hope that they're scientists and not downstairs.
Right. Yes.
If they are, we're going to inspect them. Oh, wait, we can't because we're part of the United States. And here's what's really troubling. It's not just that we've extended the deadline, and this administration has some credibility problems on deadlines and has since we were told that biological weapons or chemical weapons in Syria would be a red line. Apparently there are no red lines when negotiating with Shiite powers in the Middle East. So that's a little disturbing. But again, much more disturbing are quotes that are coming from unnamed but official sources in the U.S. This is one that was offered to the French press and quoted in various European and Middle Eastern publications today. So the entry point, referring to the negotiations, isn't that we must be able to get into every military site, because the United States of America wouldn't allow anybody to get into every military site, so that's not appropriate. Excuse me? That's not appropriate? Look, I get it. Iran is a sovereign nation, and when you enter a negotiation with a sovereign nation, you know that they have rights as we have rights, and you also know that by definition a negotiation means nobody walks away fully satisfied, otherwise it's not a negotiation. But let's be clear, do unto others as they will have them do unto you is a sucker's bet if you're not actually equal partners. When our own government recognizes that Iran is the single biggest exporter of state-sponsored terrorism, to assume that they simply have to meet the measure of how the United States behaves is actually insane. So I get it. A good deal doesn't necessarily mean a deal that will satisfy everyone in the United States. That's why we call it a negotiation. But this is downright foolish and potentially deadly dangerous.
Why do you think they're so amped to get a deal done when there's really no public outcry to get the deal done? It's either apathy or people are saying this is a bad deal. I never hear people say, boy, this is a really good idea.
I think there's two reasons. First of all, when you start to pursue a goal, and here I want to judge them with the best of motivations, you get intoxicated with your own possibility of success. The problem is that's why you need outsiders who tell you, you know, a win, if it's a bad game, it's not a win.
That's
yeah,
true.
I got to say, I thought that explanation was pretty lame. I did, and if anything, it's turned me even more against this possible deal. It was just, look, I've been a negotiator my whole life, and I do try and look at it from the point of view, why should I expect something from the person across the table that I wouldn't do myself? But it's not just a person across the table. It's a person that's lied, cheated, stolen, and sponsored terrorism all over the world. So, you know, this was not a good way to go. I really think at this point, better than 50-50, no deal. I think politically Obama can afford it now because he has had a good couple of weeks.
Listen, if his wins allow him to do that, because if this is the deal we make, this is a deal that we will, I hope, only live to regret, not die to regret.
Okay. Rick, what'd you cook up tonight?
With short time, but that's okay, short subject. I was taken by this story that I read about what happened at Walmart. Apparently a gentleman, interesting guy, biker guy, I like biker guys, he goes in and he asks for a cake with a Confederate flag on it. Well, as we know, Walmart had voluntarily decided they were not going to do business anymore with Confederate flag or Confederate materials, and nobody forced them. It's not government. That was just a decision they made. So they said no to him. And he proved it because in the video you can go watch, he shows you the rejection and the whole thing. So the guy's telling the truth. Then he had the idea to go back into Walmart and give them a design of a flag and ask them if they would do that cake. They gladly complied, did an absolutely beautiful job of it. As you can see, the problem is it's the ISIS flag. So Walmart, no to the Confederate flag and yes to the ISIS flag.
Wow.
Look, I appreciate that Walmart wants to show some respect towards the black community in America and getting rid of the Confederate stuff, but guys, come on. I have spent years arguing for Walmart employees that they don't get paid enough. Whoever the bonehead was who didn't think to check out that kind of language and went ahead and make the cake makes me feel like maybe I shouldn't be arguing for Walmart employees the way that I do, because that was really stupid. Walmart, of course, has apologized, but oh, guys, come on.
That just shows you how many little people are paying attention to
Yeah.
foreign policy and ISIS because
But you know, when you see the lettering, you go, better check this out.
that's a little
you know?
different. At least it wasn't like that flag in London at that gay pride event. Now that would have been a problem. That's certainly for sure. By the way, CNN will not even
They won't
retract that
apologize.
story,
I know.
and the reporter's standing by it, which is fascinating. Anyway, it's time for Yay or Nay. That's coming up next. This is the Daily Wrap. You're not allowed to go anywhere.
TV for 800?
In the theme to this 90s sitcom, I pulled up to the house about 7 or 8, and I yelled to the cabbie, "Yo, Holmes, smell you later." Encore.
What is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Yep.
Remind us never to hear Alex Trebek say "Yo Holmes" in any capacity once again. That was just unsettling.
That was profoundly disturbing.
It was,
Yo Holmes.
I don't think I'm going to sleep tonight.
well, he was doing Snagglepuss, doing the Fresh Prince. I mean, that was,
Snagglepuss Rock.
exit, stage
Stage
left.
Alex Trebek is Wonder Bread. Okay, welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay. First up, Texas Senator Ted Cruz sat down with NBC's Savannah Guthrie to discuss last week's historic Supreme Court rulings on both Obamacare and same-sex marriage, a time which the senator has called some of the darkest days in American history, where he says the justices violated their oath to protect the Constitution. But when Guthrie asked Cruz about allowing state clerks to deny marriage licenses to couples based on their own religious beliefs, the conversation, well, it took an interesting turn.
If a state clerk refused to issue a marriage license to an interracial couple, would you agree with that too?
Well, there's no religious backing for that.
But opponents of interracial marriage did use religion as their reasoning.
You say it should be left to states. Would you have taken that same position in the case of interracial marriage, that that's not a constitutional right and the states should have been free to ban interracial marriage if they wanted to?
Of course not. And we fought a bloody civil war.
What's the difference in those two cases?
It is exactly what I said, that we fought a bloody civil war over the original sin of our country that was slavery.
Okay, yay or nay, is war the only way to legitimize a cause?
No.
No, of course not. If anything, his argument is if we had a civil war over gay marriage, he'd be in favor of it. It's so backwards. It's
Rick, I'm going to build a crescendo to Heather and
Yeah,
you.
okay.
It gets very, it's complicated. He's wrong. No, the answer to that is no. But it gets very complicated. It goes back to the same issue we were talking about again. No one knows how to answer it. It's when you take religion versus the right to marriage, it becomes really difficult.
You know, saying that Ted Cruz is right about anything is almost as upsetting to me as listening to Alex Trebek rap. But he actually was right, although there were some people who did use, biblical interpretations, to be against interracial marriages. It wasn't real. These arguments are real, so he was right about that. Beyond that, though, people who like Ted Cruz, you might want to take a really close look at what he just pulled on the trade agreement. It is remarkable.
Okay, we'll have to take a
Talk
look at
about
that.
for it before he was against it. He wasn't just for it before he was against it. He was for it, and then he just killed everybody who was for it.
Interesting.
I mean,
Could be a
remarkable.
potluck tomorrow night. We'll see. I do like Savannah in those glasses, though. I will say that. Anyway, let's move on to some news from the final frontier, shall we? Video has surfaced online of what appears to be 3 UFOs shooting out of the Earth's atmosphere. The UFO, or O's in this case, those 3 gray dots you see moving across the screen, okay, they went away, were captured in NASA's live transmission from the International Space Station, but that was right before that transmission was cut off. Okay, very serious here. I'm into this. Are UFOs real? And I'm asking that as a serious question. Do you believe that? Yes or no?
I believe there's more going on than we can currently measure.
Okay, good answer.
I would agree with that, and I think John Podesta, one of the Clintons'
He wants to see if,
yeah. I mean, he definitely, there's people who know things that we don't know.
Yes, I completely agree with it. And if you look at evidence, particularly coming from people flying airplanes and some of their reports on what they've seen, there's a lot more to this than anybody wants us to know.
Wow. Okay. I totally believe in him, completely. And Independence Day 2 comes out next summer. Anyway, finally, while we're on the topic of space, news out today from the Russian Federal Space Agency that a Russian cosmonaut has set a new record for the most time spent in space at one time, 803 days in all. When he finally returns to Earth next September, the record will be even longer, having spent a total of 877 days, or 2.5 years in space. That breaks the old record held by American astronaut Rick Edward Unger, who was up there, I think, for 10 years or something, but he didn't age. He stopped the aging process. Anyway, panel, thank you so much.
Talk about avoiding your landlord.
I'm Joe Concha, Newsmax Prime with J.D. Hayward. That's next.